This is a piece of factory cut, 1/4 inch thick basswood. And this angle here should be a right angle. So let's see how close it is to 90 degrees. I also have a piece of pine that I cut to be at a 45-degree angle. And I try to cut it so that it's slightly off 45. So let's see how close it is to the actual 45 degrees. There is a slight gap right here. It's very, very small, but as you can see, the hand-cut miter is actually pretty close. So in this direction, you can see that it is definitely not flat. So to help me get to the perfect 90-degree and 45-degree angles, I made this shooting board. With the exception of this piece of mahogany, everything else on this shooting board is made from old and recycled material. This design is very similar to the one Paul Celler uses, except he uses wedges and I'm going to use straight pieces that are friction fit into the channels here. So let me show you how to make this, and then I'm going to see if I can get these pieces into the perfect 90 and perfect 45-degree angles with this shooting board. I've been wanting to do this shooting board for a while now, so now I have the opportunity. Here's all the mahogany pieces. That's the big cutoff piece and a piece of old pine. Mahogany was a little bent, so I'm playing it flat and check it with my trusty old Starrett square. Yep, close enough. Alright, so I'm just marking out one of the dados and chopping it out a little bit so I can get a saw in there. Well, first I'll make that trench a little bit bigger. It's called a dado, or a trench, or a housing. A lot of names for this. I think I like trench and housing the best. Alright, so I'm using that block piece to mark where the other end should be, and just using my trusty old square again. Marking it off. Yeah, there we go. Twice will be good. Nope, maybe 3 times. Alright, let's see how this fits. So it's a custom fit, and it's a little bit off right in the corner there, so I'll just trim that off, no big deal. And now I'm just using my saw to deepen this cut, so I can chop out bigger chunks at once, now that I'm sure that the block piece is going to fit. Again, I think this is called I want to call it a groove, but it's called a trench, or a housing, or a dado. Americans call it a dado. I'm using my little plane here, router plane. Americans call it a dado, Europeans call it a trench, and English call it a housing. A lot of names. Alright, so the plate is held on with screws. So anything that's thinner than this 3/8 or 1/2 inch I can just do without anything to worry about. But something that's a little bit thicker, I have to worry about the edge breaking out when the plane is hitting it. So all I have to do is just add another piece. I just hold on to this piece with my hand, and that's more than enough to prevent the edge from breaking out, both for the 45-degree one as well as the 90-degree one. Just holding it with my hand is more than sufficient. Alright, so I'm just using the router plane again to flatten out the bottom for a nice trench to house the hook piece. And the hook piece fits in there pretty snugly. The thing about hand joinery is everything should fit pretty snugly. The best joints are the ones where it almost feels like the pieces are going to break, but they don't break. Those make the best joints. Alright, I'm just gluing out these pieces in there. And once it's all glued, make sure I check that it's at a 90-degree angle. Oops, forgot to turn on the mic, so I guess I will be providing all the sound effects for you. Click, 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 click. So I'm just drilling some holes for some dowel rod. I like dowel rods. They're a neat little joinery they're one step above screws if you want to hold something permanently. And I'm holding this hook piece permanently to the back piece. And that humming you hear in the background, well, that's the CNC machine running. I wanted to see if it would be too distracting or too loud to record while the CNC is running, and it's not. So in the future, if you hear a faint humming in the background, you'll know exactly what it is. still shining through. It's barely there, if anything at all. In case you forgot, this miter cut was a little bit off. From this direction, the miter looks pretty good. And now, this side, this surface is now perpendicular to this surface. It's nice and flat plane. So the shooting board was very effective at correcting the 45-degree angle problem, as well as the 90-degree angle problem that I had. Now I've chosen the material for this particular shooting board very carefully, even though most of them are recycled. The base here is mahogany, and mahogany is stable whether it's old or new. The two pieces here are made from oak, from a house that was over 100 years old. And this particular piece of pine is probably 30 or 40 years old. So altogether, I'm hoping this to be a very stable shooting board. I'm also using a dedicated plane. This is my most expensive plane that I own right now. And it's also the one that I use the very least. But it does make a very, very effective shooting board plane because these angles here are very sharp. And it's probably going to stay as a shooting board plane for the rest of its life. So I hope you enjoyed the project and thank you for stopping by.